right, it's time to get Billsy. Breaking news: Joe Brady has been announced as the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, signing a 5-year deal to take over for Sean McDermott, moving from offensive coordinator to the head man in charge. My initial reaction: stunned, underwhelmed, disappointed, stunned again. And it made me think about, hey, what's the name of my channel? Get Billsy. Well, Buffalo sure did with this one. And as I've had a little time to let things sink in a little bit, my original thought was that this would not be the route. Of all the guys that they interviewed 9 guys, he was the one I had at the bottom in terms of taking over. I thought if anybody, it'd be like a Daboll if it was going to be a familiarity move, given that I thought Josh played his best ball under Daboll. I know Brady's was the OC when Josh won the MVP, but I really think he broke out of his shell under Daboll. And I didn't. The Bills have been very much about keeping things in house. I mean, that's what they've done with inside of the building, like promoting guys in various ways, whether it's been on the coaching staff or within the administration staff. That's the idea with the draft, is they draft guys and try and keep as many in house as possible. So the likelihood of going outside their comfortability, I thought, was unlikely at first, but the more they were really searching and the more it expanded, my thought was, hey, they're being serious. They're looking to get out of the norm. But of course, the first guy they interviewed, Joe Brady, was the guy they hired. And from what I understand, they didn't do any second interviews with anybody. So again, a little underwhelming. But again, now that I've had some time to think about it and let the dust settle a little bit, it makes sense in the sense that Terry Pagula loves Joe Brady. Okay, something that I don't think a lot of people remember or may not have even known is that Terry Pagula. Well, let me back up. Terry Pagula has donated close to $100 million to Penn State University. He helped construct their hockey arena. He's a big donor to Penn State. And when James Franklin got fired this past fall, one of the names he really pushed for was Joe Brady. He's obviously a big believer in Brady, really likes him to push him in that direction, be the head coach of a huge Big Ten school that way. He obviously believes in him. So in retrospect, after the initial shock came, it kind of made sense. I'm not necessarily saying it's right or wrong, but it makes sense that's the route they would go because A, the Bills are very much keep in-house. B, Pagula obviously loves Brady. And he's been all the rage in all these other interviews these last 2 years. He had a handful of head coaching interviews last year, had a few more in addition to the Bills this year. So it's a matter of not if, but when he would be a head coach. And I guess the Bills didn't want him to leave the building. And some sources have mentioned, I thought this was really interesting, that one of the things that Pagula and Brandon Beane mentioned at the press conference last week was that they wanted a CEO type guy as the head coach. And according to various reports, one being Jordan Schultz, the CEO portion of the interview stood out the most about Joe Brady. His vision for how everything would be structured from the head coach seat was viewed as a home run, quote unquote. He also nailed the importance of alignment between coaching and player personnel, which clearly there was a divide there between coaching and player personnel between McDermott and Beane, which I think was the nail in the coffin for McDermott getting the heave-ho. So this is interesting. It's not my favorite hire. I had really hoped they'd go outside of the organization. And I find it really interesting. Just last night, he was the betting odds. I should have put money on Brady. The betting odds were only about 2 or 3% for Brady to get this job. Grant Udinski was at 66. Daboll was in 23 or so. So you could have won some real scratch if you would have throw a few bucks at Brady. But in the end, makes sense from the Pagula Beane standpoint. From the outside, meaning us as Bills fans, it's a little underwhelming. I don't know that there's a lot of excitement or enthusiasm with the move, but it is what it is, and we're going to have to go forward with it. I think this also lends itself to Pagula and Beane really believe in what's going on in Buffalo, and that the real issue was Sean McDermott and his inept coaching in various situations. Again, we don't have to rehash all those, but 13 seconds being a big one. and just his conservative and tight coaching kind of led to conservative and tight play. So this is again a little underwhelming, but makes sense in the end. I think the biggest thing is this: they need to bring in a new defensive coordinator. Keeping Bobby Babbage, I think, would be a huge mistake. We need to get an aggressive attack style DC in here, not Sean McDermott Part Two, which is what obviously Babbage. I'm sure he would have his own tweaks. He was running McDermott's defense, but he would have his own tweaks. But it's probably going to be relatively the same. That's where he kind of learned from. That's his. He's part of that McDermott coaching tree. I haven't heard anything about who they would hire as DC, if they're going to bring somebody else on as OC, or if Brady's going to be the play caller. I would assume he is, but they'll still hire an OC, I would imagine. So we'll see how the staff fills out, but little underwhelming to say the least. I don't know. We'll see how it goes, but again, my channel's named Get Billsy for a reason. The Bills sure did that today, living up to the namesake. But in Joe Brady we trust. Go Bills, I guess.